Rain hammered the White House roof the night the file leaked. Somewhere in a hidden D.C. parking garage, a trembling whistleblower handed over a sealed envelope to a nervous reporter. Scrawled across the top, 8647, Shell Operations, Classified. Inside, damning documents, signatures, funds, operations on African soil, and one name, James Comey. The story exploded like wildfire. Former FBI director linked to illegal Shell network. News outlets scrambled, talk shows gasped. But deep inside the Pentagon, senior officials panicked. They knew what this meant. Meanwhile, half a world away, in Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré sat silently in a dim military office, the flicker of a laptop screen lighting his young but worn face. He had seen these documents before, not leaked from a whistleblower, but buried in a mass grave of truth Africa was never meant to dig up. And now, the world had seen them too. He rose quietly, slid his beret on, and whispered, "It begins." That was the moment it all changed. By morning, every major American network had picked up the story. CNN called it the scandal of the century. Fox called it global treason. But the public didn't know the full horror yet. Inside the documents were records, millions funneled through fake companies, with ties to illegal mining, weapons, and regime manipulation across Africa. Most shocking, these funds were traced to operations during Comey's FBI tenure. But buried on page 47 was a sentence that puzzled even veteran intelligence officers. Traoré identified complication, neutralization recommended. Who was Captain Ibrahim Traoré, and why did Comey's team flag him as a complication? Most Americans had never heard of him. But inside Africa, he was a rising lion, a military leader who took power to end foreign theft and restore dignity to his people. He had already kicked out multiple Western agents, risking everything. Now, with the documents leaked, the world looked at him again. And when Traoré scheduled a live global press conference, everyone, from Washington to London, held their breath. What would he say? No one was ready for what came next. The press room was small, no red carpet, no flashy lights, just Captain Traoré, in a simple uniform, standing behind a wooden podium in Ouagadougou. The cameras clicked. The world watched. He didn't read from notes. He didn't smile. He simply stared into the lens and said in slow English, "To the people of America, you were never supposed to know, but now you do." The room fell silent. Traoré spoke for 7 minutes. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. But he revealed everything. Names of corporations, hidden military bases, and how millions of African children were poisoned, starved, or displaced, while elites cashed in under codename 8647. Then he said something that broke hearts. "In my village, there are no more mothers, only graves, and the hands that funded it wore suits and shook hands in your capital." Some reporters cried. Others just sat, stunned. In that moment, Captain Traoré wasn't just speaking for Burkina Faso. He was speaking for every forgotten soul buried by greed. The world hadn't just witnessed a scandal. They had just met its human cost. As Traoré's broadcast went viral, a video quietly resurfaced online. It showed a young girl, no older than 10, lying face down in a shallow river in Burkina Faso. She wasn't playing. She wasn't breathing. A voice in the video whispered, "She drank from the pipe." Viewers around the world recoiled. But Traoré's press team confirmed it. The girl had unknowingly drunk toxic runoff from a nearby mining site operated under a shell company linked to the 8647 operation. That girl had a name, Mariama. Her parents had protested the site weeks before her death. Days later, they vanished. American viewers began asking, were we funding this? How did this happen under our noses? More than politics, this was becoming a humanitarian tragedy. Traoré's calm voice haunted viewers. To the West, it's a scandal. To us, it's a funeral. By evening, justice for Mariama trended across social media. But for Traoré, this wasn't just justice. It was war. Back in the U.S., inside a dim hotel room in Maryland, an ex-CIA agent named Mark Callahan watched Traoré's broadcast with shaking hands. He lit a cigarette, took a deep breath, and opened his old encrypted laptop. Then he stared at a name. James Comey. Mark knew everything. Years ago, he was assigned to observe operations in West Africa. But what he witnessed, the silent extraction of resources, the displacement of villages, the silencing of journalists, never left him. One name showed up in every folder, every Black Op memo, every unsigned contract. 8647. He tried to report it. He was threatened. Now, Traoré had done the unthinkable. He had exposed it. Mark opened an old voice note from an African doctor he once met, a woman who begged him to speak up. Her voice crackled through the speakers. If you don't tell them, they will never know what they did to us. Mark closed his laptop. He stood up, and for the first time in years, he picked up the phone to speak. Her name was Amaka Njoku, a fearless Nigerian journalist. 2 years ago, she published a report titled, "Shells in the Soil, the Truth Beneath Our Feet." The article was taken down within 12 hours. Her press badge was revoked. 3 days later, she disappeared. Until now. Traoré, during a second press release, held up a photo. It was Amaka, standing beside a crowd of women crying outside a destroyed mining camp. She had been investigating one of the sites linked to Comey's shell network, Site 86473. She told the truth before anyone would listen, Traoré said. They made her vanish, but her words will not. He paused. Then he read a sentence from her journal. When the West sees gold, we see blood. We are rich in resources, but poor in peace. Americans began asking, why didn't we hear about this before? Who silenced her? A mother from Kentucky commented, I just watched that clip holding my daughter. I can't stop crying. This was no longer just a scandal. It was a reckoning. 2 days after Traoré's second press release, a sealed brown envelope was hand-delivered to the U.S. Embassy in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. No return address, no markings. Inside was a handwritten letter, smudged with dust and sweat. It was from a 13-year-old boy named Yakuba. He wrote, My father died working in the mines. When the big trucks came, they told him to dig deeper. He fell. They left him there. Mama cries every night. I saw you on TV, sir. Please help us. Please don't forget us. The ambassador stared at the letter for a long time. Traoré later shared the letter at a UN side event in Accra. He didn't scream. He didn't blame. He simply read it, word for word. Then he looked up and said, America funds freedom at home, but here, your money buys chains. Across the U.S., families watching with their children couldn't hold back the tears. This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about children like Yakuba, whose only crime was being born where the ground held gold. The world froze when James Comey appeared in a surprise CNN exclusive. Sitting stiffly under bright studio lights, he looked thinner, shaken. The host leaned in. Did you know about Operation 8647? Comey hesitated, then he sighed. Yes, I knew. We were told it was strategic containment, national interest. But when I asked too many questions, they pushed me out. Then came the twist. Comey revealed he kept a personal flash drive, hidden in a Virginia farmhouse. It held names, account numbers, black site locations, and proof that private U.S. security contractors helped run the illegal African mining shells. I was scared to say anything, but this kid, Traoré, he has guts, and maybe I owe the truth before it buries me. The interview ended with Comey whispering, There's more, much more. Back in Burkina Faso, Traoré watched silently. He leaned forward and whispered to an aide. He just opened the floodgates. Within an hour, Traoré's name was trending above the Super Bowl. But the storm had only begun. 2 nights later, the skies above Ouagadougou buzzed with unease. A drone, American-made, violated Burkina Faso's airspace at 2:13 a.m. Traoré was asleep in a government compound when a guard shouted. Moments later, a precision strike hit the wrong building, just 40 meters away. 4 staffers died. One was Traoré's childhood friend. His name was Mamoudou, the man who once shared bread with Traoré during the army's harshest training years. He wasn't political. He just wanted to build a school. The explosion left a crater, and the world stunned. Traoré walked into the smoke at dawn, picked up a piece of burning debris, and faced the cameras. They are not just coming for me. They're coming for the truth. In the U.S., journalists panicked. A senior Pentagon official resigned that same day, refusing to comment. American mothers posted videos of themselves crying, holding their children close. One comment read, "I can't believe this. I thought we were the good guys." Traoré buried Mamoudou that afternoon. He didn't cry on camera, but millions did. In a quiet townhouse outside Washington, D.C., Elena Graves, a former CIA analyst, locked her doors and covered her windows. Her hands trembled as she pressed record on her phone. "My name is Elena Graves. I worked on Operation 8647. What Captain Traoré is saying is only half the truth. The rest would shake this planet." She detailed how American officials greenlit the movement of billions through fake energy companies in Africa. These funds were never meant for the African people. They were laundered back into U.S. political campaigns and private war contracts. But then came the bombshell. There's a connection between Traoré's father and the original leak. His father died in a car crash. That wasn't an accident. She paused, tears filling her eyes. "I stayed silent too long. I have children. I want them to know. The truth matters." She sent the recording to a trusted international journalist. 3 hours later, it leaked on X, formerly Twitter. Hashtag Chach Elena Speaks exploded. And Captain Traoré? He stared at her face on the screen and whispered, "So, I'm not alone." The White House scrambled. By sunrise, reporters circled like sharks. Cameras pointed, mics shoved forward. But one envelope stopped everything. It was mailed from Burkina Faso's embassy in Paris, marked urgent. Inside, a signed open letter from Captain Ibrahim Traoré to the American people. The language was simple, but the meaning hit deep. "I am not your enemy. I am a soldier who wants peace for his people, not chains and new colors. You were told Africa is broken, but what broke us was theft, dressed as aid, branded as freedom. If you love your children, then understand. I am fighting for mine." The letter ended with 5 names. All American senators. Each had received campaign donations from shell companies exposed in the 8647 files. CNN broke it live. Protests erupted in Chicago, Atlanta, and Phoenix. Parents holding signs. "No more lies. We believe Traoré." Back in Burkina Faso, Traoré stood before orphans whose parents died in collapsed mines. He touched their shoulders and said, "This time they will hear you." And for the first time, they believed him. In a dusty corner of Ouahigouya, a little girl named Awa waited by a broken fence. She wore an oversized t-shirt with faded stars. Her eyes, too big for her small face, stared at the convoy passing by. Traoré's motorcade. A soldier stepped out. Awa walked up barefoot and handed him a picture she'd drawn. It showed Captain Traoré with wings, protecting crying children from fire. The soldier handed it to the captain. He stopped everything. "Who is she?" he asked. Minutes later, Traoré knelt beside Awa. She whispered, "My mother said, they took everything, but you didn't run, you stayed.
Traoré took off his beret, placed it gently on her head, and said, "No one will take from you again." The image, Traoré kneeling to a barefoot girl, went viral globally. American families began mailing donations directly to villages across Burkina Faso, not through governments, not through aid groups, just from one family to another. In that moment, something changed. This wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was a movement.
The world watched live as Captain Ibrahim Traoré entered the United Nations General Assembly. He stood tall in his uniform, but his eyes scanned the room with caution. He had prepared a bold speech, one that named names and traced money trails from American NGOs to illegal mining operations backed by corrupt elites. But just as he stepped up to speak, a motion was called. The French ambassador stood. "Captain Traoré's speech violates Article 4C of diplomatic neutrality. We vote to suspend his speaking time." Hands went up across the room. Allies turned cold. The vote passed. Traoré didn't flinch. He simply turned to the cameras and said in a soft, firm voice, "If the UN cannot bear my words, perhaps the world can." He pulled a small USB drive from his pocket, held it high, and handed it to a journalist in the front row. "This contains the rest. Unfiltered. Unedited. Truth." The feed cut out moments later, but it was too late. Within hours, the files were everywhere, and what they revealed would break the hearts of millions, including something buried deep about James Comey's darkest orders. The leaked files contained a document marked Comey Directive 86473 Zulu, dated 2017. The memo, signed in his own handwriting, approved the protection of a private security firm operating in West Africa, despite being flagged for child labor, smuggling, and lethal force violations. In bold letters, proceed. Geostrategic interests justify risk. When Americans saw the document, silence followed, then rage. TikTok exploded. An ex-military mother in Texas broke down crying on live. "We lost our son in Mali. For this?" Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, Traoré sat alone in a candlelit room. In front of him lay a photo of his father, who was once a local activist, killed in a mysterious roadside blast the same year as the memo. Now he finally knew why. They killed him to shut him up. His hand trembled, but instead of breaking, he stood. "Then I will speak for both of us." And the world, it was listening and weeping. As protests surged across both continents, the U.S. Senate was forced to respond. A hearing was announced, urgent, live-streamed, and unprecedented. Captain Traoré was invited to testify via secure satellite, but there was a problem. Burkina Faso's internet lines were mysteriously severed hours before the session. Western officials claimed a technical error, but no one believed it. Inside the capital, thousands gathered around a military transmitter tower chanting, "Speak, speak, let him speak." Against all odds, a backup signal was activated. The hearing began, and Traoré appeared, his face stern but composed. He didn't shout, he didn't beg. He simply showed a photo, the same one Awa had drawn. "This is how a child sees our world. Fire everywhere. And still, hope." He paused. "I am not here to accuse. I am here to ask, how many more children must die before the powerful feel enough?" One American senator, the granddaughter of a Nigerian refugee, broke into tears on national television, and the room went silent. Even Comey, watching from house arrest, put his head down. As the world reeled from Traoré's testimony, a letter surfaced online, written by Awa, the little girl from a dusty village in Burkina Faso, whose drawing had reached the U.S. Senate. Her voice was soft, her handwriting uneven. "My name is Awa. My papa died when men with big guns came. But Captain Traoré gave me books and shoes and told me I was smart. I drew fire because that's what I see, but I hope one day to draw trees. and birds, and my mama laughing again. The letter went viral. Thousands of American children read it aloud on TikTok. Elderly veterans posted responses, some crying as they whispered, "We didn't know." One retired U.S. soldier wrote, "I was in Burkina. We were told we were protecting interests. Now I know those interests weren't human. The truth wasn't just information. It was a child's pain, and the world felt it." Captain Traoré didn't celebrate. He sat alone holding the original letter. "She saved the world more than I ever could." And he wept. Under pressure, the U.S. Congress voted to open a global tribunal on the 86-47 shell scandal. Comey's legal team begged for leniency, but the evidence was overwhelming. Wire transfers, signed approvals, and first-hand testimonies from African survivors painted a grim picture. Then came the final twist. A whistleblower from within the CIA stepped forward. She confirmed the classified mission wasn't just for resource control, but to experiment with surveillance technology on unaware African populations. Traoré was offered a seat at the tribunal, but he said no. "I am not here to watch justice. I am here to rebuild." Instead, he asked the International Court to send compensation directly to the families, not governments. And then, without media cameras, he traveled to the very village where his own father died. He kneeled at the grave. Beside him stood Awa, holding a single flower. "You did it," she whispered. Traoré didn't reply. He only placed the flower on the grave, and for a long time said nothing. That silence was everything. A year passed. In the place once ruled by fire and fear, a school now stood, built from foreign compensation funds, not as an apology, but as a beginning. Awa stood before her class, holding up a new drawing. This time it showed green trees, children laughing, and a sun rising behind a mountain. "This is what I see now." Captain Traoré didn't speak at the opening. He just watched. Far away, James Comey, now stripped of honors and confined to a quiet cabin, watched the same broadcast. Alone. "Maybe this is justice," he muttered. The scandal changed laws, reshaped borders of truth, and awakened millions. But the real revolution? It happened in hearts, in tears, in the flower that bloomed where so much had once been buried. And now, to every one of you watching, if this story moved you, if Awa's voice touched your soul, if Traoré's fight meant something to you, like this video, subscribe right now, and comment with just one word: hope. Because sometimes, hope is all it takes to change the world.